Hey, it's Zach Lowe, host of the Lowe Post podcast. Wake up to the best story you'll hear all day, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, where you get an inside look at the most interesting stories at ESPN as told by the top reporters and insiders on the planet. The breaking news of SportsCenter with the deep dive storytelling of 30 for 30. Today's episode was one I thought you would especially enjoy. Please listen and subscribe to ESPN Daily wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Bielitsa for the win. He got it. Sacramento wins the game.
The Houston Rockets lost on a buzzer beater to the Sacramento Kings last night. And it was a tough outing, relatively at least, for James Harden. Today, Zach Lowe explains the wild new strategy teams are using against him and why it's so hard to stop the NBA's most potent offensive weapon. I'm Mina Kimes. It's Tuesday, December 10th. This is ESPN Daily, presented by Indeed. Zach, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. Like the rest of the NBA, I remain befuddled by James Harden.
Befuddled?
Isn't that the right word for what he does to defenses? Befuddle?
Some people are befuddled. Some people are confused. Some people are irritated. Some people are in awe.
Zach Lowe is a senior writer for ESPN and the host of the Lowe Post podcast.
I think it's like a Rorschach test for how you feel about life has just become like how you feel about James Harden.
Zach, I have brought you here because you are the smartest basketball mind I know to answer the very simple question, how do you stop James Harden?
I don't think stop is a thing. I just think he's going to get his numbers one way or another. It's more, how do you make him take difficult shots without fouling him, which is an art form that few have mastered? And how do you annoy him? But I don't know if there's a stop.
Let's do what Harden is so famous for and take a step back. He's clearly one of the best offensive players in NBA history. He won MVP in 2018. He's won the scoring title the last 2 seasons. What makes Harden so unguardable?
He kind of broke basketball. It started 2 seasons ago and really accelerated last year, where he became really the first guy, even more so than Steph Curry, to just take step-back threes one-on-one.
Guarded by Caldwell Pope, bumps him off. Now fades on the step-back three. Harden connects. Rockets up by 6.
No pick and roll, no actual play. Just like straight up, I'm going to dribble for a while and shoot a 3. And it's actually going to go in enough, and I'm going to get fouled enough that it's going to be efficient. Like that had never happened before.
Beard, straight away, looking for 30. He's fouled! It goes! And it's now 31 consecutive games of 30 points for James Harden.
He's just going to take 20 step-back threes, make 6 of them, get fouled on 3 of them, and the math is like, oh my God, we lost. Before this year, he had really sort of settled into being one of the ultimate NBA control freaks. He likes to walk the ball up the floor. He likes to know where everybody is. He tells people where to stand. Clint, okay, right side this time. Okay, left corner. PJ, Eric, right wing. Okay, I got everything set. I know all the reads. I know where everyone's going to be open. This is how I want to play. Slow down, chess master. I can outthink everyone on the floor.
Zach, you talk to a lot of coaches and executives. What is their reaction to Harden?
A mix of admiration and irritation, I think would be fair. He has made basketball look different than any of these people thought it could ever look. And there's a certain begrudging admiration for that, even though all of these people missed the passing and the ball movement and all the complexities that made us fall in love with the game. They're still like, man, he's actually able to make that work.
Why do you think some people are so irritated by what is a historic and really incredible style of play and offensive production?
I think there's a sense that he's playing to get fouled more than he's playing basketball. But drawing fouls is an art, right? Mm. And the way he moves kind of arrhythmically, like back and forth and start and stop, the way he extends his arms at just the right moment, or the way he, if you reach forward, all of a sudden he's kind of moving unnaturally into your arms to create contact. There's a difference between, I think, tricking other players, which is part of basketball, and then tricking referees. And some people feel like he crosses the line to tricking referees more than playing basketball. But look, maybe there is no way to stop him because he's effectively gamed the math of the system to this degree. But like, try some stuff to stop him, and maybe you won't have anything to complain about anymore.
That brings us to why you and I are talking today, which is not that long ago, you noticed that defenses were doing something very different to stop him.
Yeah, it really starts with Trae Young, actually. Trae Young went into Denver on November 12th and scored 42 points against a pretty conventional Nuggets defense.
Trae gets through, puts up the runner, bangs another one home. 35 for Trae Young. He's unconscious.
And I saw Mike Malone, the Nuggets coach in New York. They were here to play the Knicks. And he said, after that Trae Young game, I said to myself, I'm never letting one guy beat our team again. And 8 days later, Harden came in with the Rockets. And the Rockets had been 10-1 in their last 11 games against Denver. And Mike Malone just decided, you know what? We're throwing two guys at him. The moment he crosses half court, we're just throwing a second guy. We're making him give up the ball.
How did Harden react to that?
He reacted to it by doing really the only thing you can do when you have two guys on you 45 feet from the basket. He passed. He passed a lot. James is a really good passer. It's the most underrated part of his game. But he's used to passing to finish possessions. In that game, he would pass to start possessions because he wouldn't have any other choice. There's two guys on you, you got to pass. He would tell guys where to go. Okay, you're open over here. You slip to the middle of the floor. I'll pass you the ball, and you guys take it from here.
But I have been impressed with their game plan defensively. Going to be a season-low points. The final 105-95.
Harden, I think, had 27, which is a very low number for him, and the Rockets only scored 95.
So what happened in the next few games?
The next game was against the Clippers. And I think if there was a game the Rockets could look at and say, there's a team that's not going to double, it would have been the Clippers, because you have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on your team to not have to double team people. They're so good. But the Clippers went essentially all in, doing the same thing the Nuggets did.
Harden has it knocked out of his hands. Clemens has it. That's it. The Clippers do it again and defeat the Houston Rockets.
And beat the Rockets in a close game, 122-119.
Here's what Harden had to say after the Clippers game.
You've been running double teams at me. I've never seen that in an NBA game where you got really good defenders and you got other guys just running, a person at the top of the key at me. Like, y'all let me know when the last time y'all seen that.
Zach, is he right?
I can't recall anything quite like this. Certainly in transition during the peak of the Warriors era, you would see two or three guys fly at Steph around half court out of just sheer panic that he could shoot whenever. You would see Steph double teamed on the pick and roll 40 feet from the basket because he's Steph Curry. But I don't really remember. I mean, this is like there's barely basketball going on. This is just a dude walking up the court with the ball 60 feet from the basket, and there's a second guy waiting for him consistently. We have access to this tool called Second Spectrum, which the entire NBA uses. It's the most sophisticated tracking system that has ever been publicly known, at least. Maybe some teams have secret internal stuff that's better. Those systems log actions based on like play type. So you can get the answer to like what is their points per possession when James is trapped on a pick and roll. The tracking system identifies a pick. It's a pick and roll. Okay, we can spit that out. That's easy. There's no play on some of these. There's no like basketball happening. There's no like what's the points per possession anytime James is walking with the ball and two guys come up to him. Like there's no way to tag that as like it's not an isolation play because he's not doing anything. It's not a pick and roll because there's no pick. It's like barely basketball. And so these systems are like, we don't know how to identify this as a thing. And so there's no, I mean, they're working on it, but there's no easy way to get it. It's kind of remarkable.
What other teams have tried this?
The Mavericks took it up another level. The Mavericks were like, whatever people have been doing, we're turning it up to 11. We're putting two guys on you 65 feet from the basket. We're going to have people waiting for you the moment you cross half court.
3 games ago, the Denver Nuggets doubled James Harden, found a lot of success. Then the LA Clippers did it last game. Now the Mavericks are doing it here tonight. It's a copycat league.
It felt like, okay, something is happening here. It might not happen every game. There might be some teams that don't think this is a good idea, but something has fundamentally changed in a way that is going to be lasting.
Coming up, why the Rockets adding Russell Westbrook could be behind the double teams on Harden. So, Zach, now that we're seeing these teams try a new tactic against Harden, why didn't they do it last season?
I think this is a direct trade-off of exchanging Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. Last season, if you double-teamed Harden, right beside him would be Chris Paul, a historically elite three-point shooter when you give him space. Now, there's Russ, who does not want to shoot threes and shoots them because he has to now and has been a dreadful jump shooter for 3 years. He's going to dribble into the paint, kick to another guy. Maybe we close out on that guy, blah, blah, blah. And then it's dead. Then it's reset. You've done your job. Now, that's not going to work every time. But I think that's the theory of why teams feel more comfortable doing it.
Since that November 20th Denver game, teams have done this more often than not against James Harden. How has it been working?
The numbers say it has not been working. Look, they lost to Dallas in that game I'm talking about, but they had 123 points. They lost to San Antonio, had 133 points in double overtime. They beat Toronto, who did it, I think, as aggressively over the weekend as Dallas did, and in more creative ways even.
And that is the first shot taken by Harden at the 4:04 mark of the opening quarter.
James didn't take a shot in that game until the end of the first quarter almost, and he only took 11 shots and 6 free throws, which is like, whoa, to hold James Harden to 11 shots and 6 free throws. The rest of the Rockets, however, made 22 threes.
Macklemore, he has been outstanding tonight.
Like, you and I might have been able to make a couple of these looks that the supporting cast was getting. I mean, Ben McLemore made 8 threes, and on some of them there was nobody within 10 feet of him.
Did the Hawks do this against Harden?
Yeah, it didn't go well for the Hawks.
James on the drive to the basket for 2 more. Harden with 55 points.
It's just so easy.
They don't have a lot of very good players, and it turns out that throwing 2 not good defenders at Harden with 3 not good defenders behind the play is not going to end well for you. So, look, the Hawks are a young team. They shouldn't have a lot of good defensive players, and they didn't, and they don't, and Harden destroyed them.
There it is. 60 points for James Harden in 3 quarters.
You mentioned that this approach leaves people so wide open that even you or I could make a 3, which you should watch me try to shoot a basketball before you make that statement. But given that, why do you think teams continue to try it?
Just think about it from, if you're a coach and you lose a game because Ben McLemore, a journeyman lottery bust, makes 8 threes, or PJ Tucker goes 5 for 10 from 3, you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, you know what? That's cool. If you lose a game because you let James Harden go one-on-one and he had 60 and you just didn't change your defense because you didn't want to, and you just watched the same movie over and over again and James gets 60, you look yourself in the mirror like, that was kind of rough. That kind of sucked. That wasn't very fun. And I also think some of these coaches are, okay, PJ Tucker made another 3, Ben McLemore made another 3. They're banking on playing the long game and getting in James's head a little bit. And in some of these games, you have seen him grow frustrated by the sheer lack of shot attempts that he's getting. He passes the ball sometimes and like the disdain is just dripping from his fingertips as he releases the ball. Like you can see him rolling his eyes. Like, I got to pass again, or if you guys are really doing this to me. And then on the next possession or a couple of possessions later, he'll dribble the ball up and you can see he's made a decision like, I'm shooting. There's nothing. You can send the 4th guy at me. I do not care. I'm sick of passing. I am shooting as soon as I get towards the 3-point line. If you get in his head a little bit, maybe it goes haywire for the Rockets and you win a quarter. And if you win a quarter, maybe you win the game because you won that quarter. I think that's part of what teams are banking on.
You mentioned that one reason why teams might continue trying this, even if the numbers suggest it's not incredibly effective in one-off games, is that there is a apparent psychological impact on James Harden. He is annoyed by it. Do you think that might make this more effective in the postseason?
I think the test case is going to be, and this game hasn't really happened yet, the game when the role players are just ice cold.
Yeah.
And James is giving up the ball because it's the right play, and then the next guy makes the right play, and it winds up in the hands of all the guys we've talked about, and they're wide open, and they're 3 for 25 or 1 for their first 16. And then does James begin to get frustrated with life, basically. One of the things I like about this defense just conceptually is that James is a control freak. This is why they played super, super slow before they got Russ. He wants to walk the ball up, and you can see him do it. I got everything under control. This is a way for the other team to say, we're taking that control away from you. We are controlling the game now. We are dictating the terms of engagement, and we think you're not going to like that. And we're going to see how it goes.
Zach, what do you think the fact that defenses are even trying this crazy stuff, that they're attempting to innovate in response to the existence of James Harden, says about his impact on the game of basketball?
You know, D'Antoni told me this when I interviewed him about it. He said James should take it as a compliment. You know, that's good messaging from Mike D'Antoni, but I also think it's right. The league is out of ideas. And so they've resorted to, when you're playing 7th grade basketball and one team has a dude who's just way, 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 way better than everyone else, and the only thing you can do is guard him with 4 guys and hope that the other guys are just not good. Like, that's what they resorted to. It's both a compliment to James and almost like James broke the math of basketball. He found so many ways to get 3 points, whether it's fouls or step back threes. And the math on getting 3 over 2 is just so out of whack in favor of the offense that there's nothing left to do at this point.
Thanks, Zach.
My pleasure.
Coming up, the story of the man who made the Ice Bucket Challenge go viral and why his legacy will endure. Here's another story I want you to know. On Monday morning, the world received the tragic news that Pete Frates, the former college baseball player who helped the Ice Bucket Challenge go viral, passed away. He was 34 years old and is survived by his wife, Julie, and daughter, Lucy. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Pete's story, it goes far beyond a video on social media. Pete was, amongst many things, an athlete. He played baseball at Boston College, then went on to compete in amateur leagues. When he was on the Lexington Blue Sox in Massachusetts, he was hit by a pitch, and it was through the recovery process from that injury that he learned he had ALS. He was just 27 years old, and eventually the disease would leave him paralyzed. ALS, also called Lou Gehrig's disease, has no known cure. And for years, due in part to the fact that people didn't understand it or know much about it, there was a lack of funding for research. Pete wanted to change that.
For a young guy like myself to be diagnosed, hopefully I can use my youth and the networks that I'm part of to promote some awareness.
In 2014, he saw a video that his friend Patrick Quinn, who also had ALS, had posted of something called the Ice Bucket Challenge. The idea being, you dump a bucket of ice on your head and challenge others to do the same or donate money. Many people did both. Pete saw an opportunity and he posted his own video, asking for donations to ALS research. His challenge quickly made its way to local superstars like Julian Edelman and Tom Brady, then to his fellow Boston College alum Matt Ryan and many others in the sports world. It grew and grew and grew and raised millions of dollars. 5 years ago, our Emily Kaplan wrote about Pete for Sports Illustrated. At the time, she pointed out that in 2013, the year before Pete's challenge went viral, the ALSA national office received $128,000 in online donations. In 2014, the organization pulled in $96 million. Eventually, the challenge raised about $220 million worldwide. Much of that money was poured into research that identified a gene that contributes to the disease and has helped scientists develop drugs to treat it. In her story, Emily spoke with Pete. At the time, he could no longer speak or move, so he communicated by looking at an on-screen keyboard that followed his eyes. He told her that, when he was diagnosed with ALS, he learned that the disease had been misunderstood, underfunded, and absent from the public consciousness. He wanted to change those things. Emily wrote that Pete hung up a poster of Lou Gehrig's famous farewell speech in his own garage, and that he loved the quote from that speech that said, "I may have had a tough break, but I have an awful lot to live for." It's indisputable that Pete Frates did just that. I'm Mina Kimes, and this has been ESPN Daily. I'll talk to you tomorrow.